So one could say that the reconciliation strategy is McMahan being nice to Epicurus. That is, saying, well, it could be that Epicurus was right in what he said. We just have to be careful of what the implications are. And one of the things then what we can do, if we are careful, is to reconcile the existence requirement with a whole bunch of other beliefs that we have. For instance, that life is good, that continuing to live rather than dying is a good, and that generally speaking killing is wrong because continuing to live is good, that committing suicide is probably a bad idea and things like that because continuing to live is good. So the reconciliation strategy is again, I think McMahan being nice to Epicurus. That is, it's one way of preserving our common sense beliefs about a range of things and accepting what Epicurus said. Now, another way of dealing with it is to just reject Epicurus, which I think in this context means really more narrowly rejecting the existence requirement. And that's the other way of dealing with the thing. It's another way of dealing with the apparent conflict between the existence requirement and our common sense beliefs. One way is to just reject the existence requirement. And that is what he does in pages 240 to 242. He has this example, this hypothetical of somebody who's away on a vacation on a remote island, and while they're away, their life's work, their business completely collapses, and they don't know it. And then a day later, still having found out, they're eaten by a shark. They die. And then the question is, did something bad happen to them? And it seems, as he said, that there are certain paradoxical results that result from that if you accept the existence requirement. And that is, he says, on reflection, it seems hard to believe that it makes a difference to the misfortune he suffers whether the collapse of his life's work occurs shortly before he is killed or shortly afterward. Yet, according to the existence requirement, the difference in timing makes all the difference. So there's certain reasons for then rejecting the existence requirement according to that hypothetical. But he says immediately after that on page 241, he says, most of us, however, will be disposed to do this anyway, that is, to throw away, to reject the existence requirement. He says, he continues, apart from suffering great pain, it is hard to think of a clearer example than death of something that most people believe to be in most cases bad for the person to whom it happens. The Epicurean simply denies what most of us believe. Death, he claims, that is, the Epicurean claims, cannot be bad for us because when it occurs we will not exist at all. But that is precisely what we object to, that is, that we will not exist at all. And then he has some very interesting discussion here, general, that I referred to in the last video, of what do we do? How do we proceed when a philosophical argument, or any rational argument, or anything, whether it's philosophical or not, seems to undermine our very deep common sense beliefs, especially about what is good and bad or right and wrong. He says on page 241, when a conviction of this sort, that is, a deeply held moral conviction, clashes with the dictates of some moral theory, the challenge from the theory must be more rationally compelling than the conviction itself, if the conviction is to be justifiably dislodged. Theories seldom satisfy this demand. In the present case, the existence requirement also lacks the requisite rational force. then he goes on to say, what do we have here then with the existence requirement? We have an overgeneralization. He says that in most cases of misfortune, I have to exist to be said to suffer in the misfortune. To have a toothache is a misfortune, and one must exist to suffer to have a toothache. But we say that to die is a misfortune, and it would be an unfortunate overgeneralization to say that I must exist to suffer the bad of dying. That is a mistake. It's an overgeneralization of the existence requirement. Now, what does that say? I mean, it says something very interesting about the power or lack thereof of moral theory and philosophical argumentation in general. It says that we should hold on to our conviction that death is a misfortune for the person who dies, despite the apparent paradoxes that Epicurus has brought up. It is not an excuse, though, for not looking into the problem then. I mean, the problem still remains. We have a deeply held belief that to die is to suffer misfortune. Epicurus, though, has offered some complications, at least, by saying, well, this is a little strange, because we're saying that someone who doesn't exist has suffered a misfortune. So I think McMahan has made a really good point here about the authority of our deeply held convictions of about what is right and wrong and good and bad, and about we should be reluctant to let go of those things, even if philosophical argument seems to point in another direction. But he hasn't really solved the problem yet, has he? I mean, there still is the problem of how we can say that someone who doesn't exist has suffered a misfortune, and I think he very well knows that, and the rest of the essay is really trying to work that out.